left today, fascism is on the right, a philosophy of nationalism and authoritarianism. They call Trump a fascist because he's a nationalist. But so was my countryman Gandhi. So was Mandela and Winston Churchill. Lincoln was a nationalist. Were these men fascists? We've had authoritarian leaders since the beginning of time, but few were fascists. Look, Trump gets flayed in the media every day. Real authoritarians would have shut that down. So authoritarianism and nationalism don't exhaust the meaning of fascism. To go deeper, I sat down with progressive historian Robert Paxton, former head of Columbia University's history department. Paxton is no fan of Donald Trump. We have a group in America today, Antifa, which fashions itself anti-fascist.
Yes.
It drives speakers off the campus. Outwardly, it seems like there is some resemblance to Mussolini's black shirts, and the mission appears the same. In other words, to enforce a kind of ideological conformity by roughing up your opposition. Do you see a parallel between Antifa and the fascists that they claim to be fighting?
I think there's some tactical overlap. As soon as you start wearing a uniform and beating people up, you're obviously in fascist territory.
Now, does fascism matter today?
Yes.
Some people have said we are living through a fascist moment or a fascist strain in American politics. Are you worried that that's true?
But now the fascist label seems to me to overlook two very important differences. One is the fascist regimes did not want a free economy. They had a regulated economy, and they had what was called corporatism. And all the business enterprises were required to participate in 5-year plans, and that is the opposite of what's going on.
So the principles of the American founding, the separation of state and society, limited government, individual rights, property rights, free markets, would you agree that this is what the fascists hated?
The fascists and a lot of other people believed that these things had failed, and they were determined to propose an alternative that would revive their country.
Dateline, Rome, October 31st, 1922. Italy was a sitting duck for an ex-communist named Benito Mussolini. The lantern-jawed founder of fascism took advantage of the political unrest in Italy after World War I. Mussolini directed a march on Rome. The next step was complete dictatorial control, a step which the Italian black shirt leader took without a second thought.
When Mussolini started out, he was a Marxist. He was a socialist. He was the editor of the socialist newspaper.
Yes.
He had a long background in socialist politics, right?
Exactly.
Mussolini allied himself with an intellectual, Giovanni Gentile.
Yes.
Gentile famously said, everything in the state and nothing outside the state, which Mussolini himself later repeated. How would you interpret this doctrine of sort of centralized state power?
Mussolini and the people who rallied to his cause, and this included some highly educated people like Giovanni Gentile, they were absolutely determined to make Italy strong, as it would come about by a central authority and direction. And I think that the state was the instrument by which they thought that Italy would be regenerated.
And loyalty to the state is the vehicle to mobilize that inner soul.
Yes.
Mussolini was responding to what historians call the crisis of Marxism. Marx predicted that worker revolts would erupt in every industrialized country. But this never took place. Marx thought workers around the world would identify with each other on the basis of class. He rejected nationalism, saying a working man has no country. But Gentile, though himself a socialist, noticed that during World War I, working men fought for their own country. Mussolini and Gentile concluded that a new type of socialism was needed that would fuse nationalism and socialism. They called it fascism. And this is why socialists and progressives in America, many of whom had given up on orthodox Marxism, were drawn to fascism.
In the working out of a great national program, that seeks the primary good of the greater number.
Our new president at the time, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was infatuated by Mussolini. He called him that admirable Italian gentleman. I am much interested and deeply impressed by what he has accomplished and by his evidenced honest purpose in restoring Italy. Mussolini reviewed FDR's book in an Italian magazine. His conclusion? FDR is one of us. He's a fascist. FDR dispatched members of his brain trust to Rome to study Italian fascism with a view to importing some of it here. Rexford Tugwell, one of FDR's closest advisors, after returning from Italy, observed, "Fascism is the cleanest, neatest, most efficient piece of social machinery I've ever seen. It makes me envious." The head of FDR's NRA, or National Recovery Act, Hugh Johnson, spoke of the shining example of Mussolini. He carried fascist literature in his pocket, and he called for the end of free market capitalism in America. He empowered industrial committees in every industry to set wages and prices and report to the federal government. Clearly, FDR recognized fascism was on the left. He saw it as more progressive than the New Deal. Mussolini was clearly a man of the left. But what about the ultimate fascist of them all, Adolf Hitler? Was he a man of the left? To figure this out, we must go to Europe. Hitler, like Mussolini, was a veteran of World War I. His politics were formed here in Schwabing in the atmosphere of bohemianism and sectarian socialism. The communist Lenin lived here in exile. Hitler and Lenin both frequented the same pub. Lenin famously didn't pay his bar tab. Imagine Lenin sitting here arguing with friends on how to save communism. Lenin lived just a block up the street. Hitler lived a block over. Hitler changed the name of the German Workers' Party to the National Socialist German Workers' Party. The very term Nazi is a compression of two words, National and Sozialista. Check out the official Nazi platform. State-controlled healthcare, profit sharing for workers and large corporations, moneylenders and profiteers punished by death, state control of education, state control of media and the press, state control of banks and industries, seizure of land without compensation, state control of religious expression. This reads like something jointly written by Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Read the Nazi platform at the Democratic National Convention, and most likely it would provoke thunderous applause. Like Mussolini and Lenin, Hitler was anti-big business, anti-bourgeois, and anti-capitalist. But unlike Mussolini and Lenin, Hitler was also a racist. His racism, too, was rooted in his hatred of capitalism and business. He called the Jews greedy bankers. Hitler set out to destroy the Jews, confiscate their wealth, and redistribute it through Nazi, socialist, and welfare